In a bold and controversial move, President Donald Trump stood before his cabinet in Washington and declared a 50% tariff on copper imports, a decision that has sent shockwaves through the U.S. economy and beyond. The announcement, made with the characteristic bravado that defines his administration, was not just a policy shift, it was a seismic jolt to the intricate web of global trade, with copper, the unassuming metal that powers everything from circuit boards to car motors, at its epicenter. The tariff, set to take effect on August 1, 2025, under the authority of Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act, was framed as a matter of national security, designating copper as a strategic resource. But what began as a protectionist gambit to bolster American industry has spiraled into a crisis that threatens to unravel the very manufacturing base it aimed to protect. In less than 24 hours, the U.S. economy lost a staggering $4.2 billion, copper prices skyrocketed, and Canada, a key supplier, retaliated with a calculated pivot that could redefine global trade dynamics. This is the story of how a single tariff ignited a trade war, reshaped markets, and left American consumers footing the bill. The immediate aftermath of Trump's tariff was nothing short of chaotic. Copper prices on the COMEX exchange surged 13% overnight, climbing to a record-breaking $5.95 per pound. The ripple effect was instantaneous, exposing the fragility of America's industrial supply chain. Copper, often overlooked as a mundane industrial metal, is the silent backbone of modern life, found in every wire, every motor, every electronic device. Its sudden price spike sent shockwaves through industries that form the bedrock of the U.S. economy: automotive, construction, telecommunications, and energy. The price surge wasn't just a number on a trading screen, it translated into real-world consequences. Electric vehicle manufacturers like Tesla and Ford faced millions in monthly losses, with production costs for each vehicle rising by roughly $90 due to the 80 kilograms of copper required for wiring and motors. Small manufacturers in states like Ohio and Indiana, reliant on copper wire for electrical components, saw prices jump 18%, losing contracts to competitors in Vietnam and Thailand, where copper remained more affordable. Utility companies, grappling with 22 to 25% increases in the cost of conductors and transformer cores, began filing emergency requests for electricity rate hikes, passing the burden directly to consumers. The tariff's impact was not confined to domestic markets. On the global stage, it created an unprecedented price gap. While U.S. copper prices soared, the London Metal Exchange saw prices dip slightly, reflecting fears of declining American demand. This disparity, with U.S. copper costing up to 25% more than its global counterpart, birthed a new arbitrage market, where traders could exploit the price difference for profit. But this market anomaly was more than a financial curiosity. It exposed a fundamental flaw in the administration's protectionist logic. By imposing a tariff meant to shield domestic industry, the U.S. inadvertently made its own market less competitive, pricing American businesses out of the global supply chain. The policy, intended to foster self-reliance, instead deepened the nation's dependence on a volatile and now fractured trade network. Canada, the supplier of over 40% of America's refined copper, did not take the tariff lying down. Within days, Ottawa delivered a calculated counterstrike, freezing all copper export contracts to the United States and halting shipments from mining giants like Teck Resources and Hudbay Minerals. The Canadian government issued a stark rebuke, declaring, "We can no longer rely on a trade partner that is unstable and unilaterally changes the rules of the game." This was no mere diplomatic jab, it was a strategic pivot. Canada, which sent 52% of its $9.3 billion in annual copper exports to the United States in 2023, began redirecting its supply to Asia and Europe. Mining companies like Glencore in Quebec started rerouting raw copper to Japan, South Korea, and China for refining, effectively cutting the United States out of the supply chain. To cement this shift, Ottawa unveiled a $1.8 billion investment plan to expand copper export infrastructure, signaling an ambition to transform Canada from a reliable supplier into a strategic rival in the global metals market. This wasn't just a reaction, it was a deliberate move to reduce Canada's vulnerability to U.S. trade policies, redrawing the global trade map in the process. The Canadian response underscores a broader truth. The United States is no longer the unchallenged titan of global trade. For decades, America dominated the copper supply chain, leveraging its economic might and geographic proximity to secure favorable terms with suppliers like Canada, Chile, Peru, and Mexico. In 2024, the United States imported 810,000 tons of copper, meeting roughly 53% of its consumption needs, while domestic refining capacity covered just 5%. Facilities like Asarco in Arizona, already stretched thin, have shuttered, unable to scale up to replace lost imports. The tariff, far from solving this supply gap, has actually exacerbated it, driving up prices and creating shortages that threaten to stall entire industries. Analysts warn of a scenario eerily reminiscent of the 1930s, when the Hoover administration's protectionist policies like the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act triggered a global trade freeze and deepened the Great Depression. Today, the United States risks economic isolation as its closest allies pivot to new markets, leaving American businesses and consumers to bear the cost. The domestic fallout is already palpable. The construction sector, reliant on copper for wiring and insulation materials, is grappling with soaring costs, with estimates suggesting that building a single home could now cost $17,000 to $22,000 more. The electric vehicle industry, a cornerstone of America's push toward a green economy, is faltering as supply chain disruptions delay projects and inflate prices. A single EV, which requires copper for everything from batteries to charging ports, now costs $3,000 to $6,000 more to produce. Major automakers like General Motors, already reeling from $1.1 billion in losses tied to earlier tariffs, are bracing for further financial strain. Telecommunications and renewable energy companies face similar pressures, with rising material costs forcing them to slash profit margins, delay investments, or lay off workers. UBS projects that the U.S. GDP could shrink by 0.5 percentage points this quarter alone, a direct result of the $4.2 billion in trade losses tied to Canada's export freeze. This figure is not just a statistic, it's a warning of broader economic stagnation, with industries from energy to manufacturing teetering on the edge. The human cost of this policy is becoming impossible to ignore. Everyday Americans are feeling the pinch as utility bills climb, home repairs become pricier, and the cost of living creeps higher. Copper, once an invisible component of daily life, is now a visible driver of inflation. From the wires and household appliances to the infrastructure powering the national grid, its price surge is rippling through every facet of the economy. Ryan Young of the Competitive Enterprise Institute put it bluntly: copper tariffs will increase the cost of power transmission and grid maintenance, and consumers will be the ones ultimately footing the bill. For now, some businesses are cushioning the blow by drawing on legacy copper inventories, but this buffer is finite. When stockpiles run dry, as analysts at the Financial Times and The Week warn, the full weight of these costs will hit consumers, manifesting in higher bills, pricier products, and delayed infrastructure projects. The tariff's unintended consequences raise a deeper question. Was this policy a strategic miscalculation? Trump's administration framed the 50% tariff as a bold step toward economic independence, invoking national security to justify protecting a critical resource. Yet the reality is far messier. The United States lacks the refining capacity to meet its copper needs domestically, and the tariff has done little to address this structural weakness. Instead, it has tightened an already strained market, driven up costs, and alienated a key trade partner. Canada's pivot to Asia is not just a tactical retreat. It's a strategic realignment that could diminish America's influence over a vital global supply chain. As Canadian copper flows to new markets, United States refining plants face a shortage of raw material, pushing production costs higher and threatening the competitiveness of American industry. The irony is stark. A policy meant to strengthen the United States economy may have weakened its position on the global stage. This unfolding crisis also highlights the fragility of protectionism in an interconnected world. The United States cannot insulate itself from global markets without consequences. Copper, like oil or semiconductors, is a global commodity, and unilateral actions like tariffs ripple far beyond national borders. Canada's response, diversifying its trade partners and investing in new export infrastructure, reflects a broader trend among United States allies and trading partners. As nations seek to reduce their dependence on an unpredictable American market, the United States risks losing its leverage in critical supply chains. The $1.8 billion Canadian investment in copper export capacity is a case study in this shift, signaling a future where America's economic dominance is no longer a given. If Canada's strategy succeeds, its copper exports to Asia could multiply, leaving the United States with a shrinking share of a resource it desperately needs. The broader implications of this trade war extend beyond economics to the very fabric of American life. Copper is not just a metal, it's a linchpin of modernity, embedded in the cars we drive, the homes we live in, and the technologies we rely on. Its scarcity and rising cost threaten to slow progress in critical sectors like renewable energy and electric vehicles, undermining the United States' ability to compete in a rapidly evolving global economy. The tariff, billed as a defense of national interests, has instead exposed vulnerabilities, from inadequate domestic production to over-reliance on foreign suppliers. It has also strained relationships with allies like Canada, whose calculated response has turned a once dependable partnership into a strategic rivalry. The $4.2 billion in losses is not just a financial hit, it's a signal of a new economic order, one where the United States must navigate a more fragmented and competitive global landscape. As the dust settles, the question looms: what comes next? The Trump administration's tariff gambit has set off a chain reaction that shows no signs of slowing. American businesses are scrambling to adapt, consumers are bracing for higher costs, and Canada is forging new trade alliances that could reshape the global copper market. The promise of protectionism, a stronger, self-reliant America, has so far delivered only disruption, with industries stalling and prices soaring. The tariff's legacy may not be one of economic triumph, but of unintended consequences, forcing the United States to confront the limits of its influence in a world that no longer bends to its will. For now, the nation watches as the cost of this policy creeps into every light bulb, every car, every home. A quiet but relentless reminder that in the game of global trade, even the boldest moves can backfire. The copper tariff crisis is not just a story about a metal, it's a story about America's place in a changing world, where the stakes are higher than ever.